Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Heart Breathings. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Sarra Cannon and I'm the author of more than 25 young adult and new adult novels, mostly fantasy, but also some contemporary romance. And I am in the middle of a series on how to plot your novel. So welcome to the second video. If you haven't yet watched my plot overview, I will stick a card up here somewhere so that you can go back and watch that if you would like. There's also a free printable over on my website at heartbreathings.com/plotyournovel. You can get free downloads for all these guides that I am talking about in this series. So the first video we talked about just an overview of story structure, but today we're going to start diving into characters. So you may be wondering, why is she including a whole section on characters when we're supposed to be talking about plot? Well, it doesn't matter if your story is character driven or plot driven. You cannot have a great novel without great, well-developed characters, and it can add so much to your plot if you take some time in the beginning to really think about who your characters are, what their journey is, because you can't just take any character and plop them into a story. That story is going to be affected by what that character is going through, who they are, and if you can find that great synergy between the character's story arc and the plot of the story, that's when you really get something special. So it's worth it, I believe, to take the time out to really think about your character and how your character story arc relates to the plot in general. Now, sometimes for me, this doesn't fully solidify itself until after I'm halfway through the novel, or even sometimes when I'm all the way through to the end of the novel. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, that's why this thing wasn't coming together, or that's why she wasn't wanting to do this. Sometimes I've got character where I'm like, okay, this is how she's going to be, and then somewhere during the plot I'm like, nope, she's not going to do that because that's just not who she is, and I have to recalibrate. But I do find that planning ahead in the beginning does help me at least have a starting point and kind of a basic idea of where this character is going and how they would react in these story situations. All right, so the things that I have found to be most helpful for me as far as resources are K.M. Weiland's character arc book, and I will link that down below for you, as well as a series of articles that I have read online and workshops that I've been to from Michael Haig. But I have read, I've been to one of his workshops before, and I have read several articles that other people have written about his workshops. He does also have some books on writing screenplays and story structure in most bookstores and in the library, so I will link some of those down below. Even though I haven't read them, I've just read the articles that he has about character arc. And finally, one of my favorite of all time resources for working through character arc stuff is Deborah Dixon's book Goal, Motivation, and Conflict, and I will also link that for you down below. Most of the information that I'm going to talk about through this plot series is a combination of things that I have gotten from reading a lot of really great books on these topics, as well as just my own personal experience from writing these novels. So I will be putting some of this stuff into my own words, but if you want to dive deeper, please check out those resources from these other great authors who have put a lot of time into teaching others how to do this. Okay, so I did mention to you that I have a guide that I've put together for this entire plotting series, and you will find in that guide a section on the character's inner journey. Now, this is just something that I print out and I fill out for every POV character in my story. And by point of view character, I mean a character that we're actually in their head and we're seeing their thoughts, and their actions are what is helping to shape the story. In a lot of my YA, I started out with just first person single point of view, but then I gradually branched out to writing multiple points of view. So my main series, like my Shadow Demon Saga, started off with just one main character, and then as of book 7, it now has 4 main POV characters. So in the beginning, I just started out with one character's sheet. Now that I have 4 main POV characters, I will print out and fill out this character's inner journey sheet for each one of those main multiple point of view characters. And it is super valuable for me to be able to do that for every single character that I am writing. Doesn't mean all the side characters are the best friends or anything else, but a character who actually becomes a point of view character, this is very important. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the character's inner journey based on on what I usually fill out, and we'll just kind of talk about some of the details of it as we go. One of the main things to keep in mind is that your characters provide the emotional depth to your story. Their story arc influences the plot, and who they are influences what actions they will take and how they react to things throughout the story. So coming up with and really diving into who your character is, how they would react, what kinds of things they've faced in their past, and what kinds of feelings and challenges that they have is going to greatly impact your plot and what happens throughout the plot. So as we go through this character's inner journey, just keep that in mind, that everything we do here is going to influence your plot itself, because certain characters are going to act and react certain ways to different plot points and different antagonists. First thing I do is just fill out what my character's name is, their age, eye color, hair color, height, and any other kind of appearance things that I might want to note. So for example, I'm gonna go all the way back to my character of Harper from Beautiful Demons, which is the first book in my Shadow Demon saga. I wrote this book all the way back in 2010, so even though I'll be taking you through some spoilers, hopefully anyone who wants to read it can either go grab it right now for free. I will link that book down below, Beautiful Demons, or you can just deal with there being some spoilers here. Okay, so she's 15, she has brown eyes and blonde hair, and she's about 5'5". She's 15 when the story opens. Any other appearance things are she often will wear a ribbon around her wrist, and she explains why in the story. And it does actually become important plot point, that ribbon does, thematically later in the series. But she often wears jeans, or she'll wear clothes that kind of look more punk or a lot of black, stuff like that. Now what I do after just the basics of the description, which is good to have for reference, is getting more into who the character is. So I ask a series of questions about my characters and then fill them in as best I can at the beginning of the story. And like I said, some of this might change as time goes on, but this is where I am at the beginning of getting to know this character. So what is their deepest desire? Like, this is something they know that they want. What is her deepest desire? So for Harper, it's to be loved, to fit in. She wants nothing more than to feel like she's a part of something, to feel like she is accepted and loved for who she is. That is her deepest desire. Now, she may not admit it to anyone else, but she knows deep down this is her deepest desire. Then I ask, what does she truly need, even if she doesn't realize it yet? So this may be something that she doesn't even know she needs. Instead of something that she wants, this is her true need. Like, what does she need to truly be happy? And for Harper, it's to truly love and accept herself. She knows or thinks that she wants to be loved by others, but what she doesn't realize that she needs is to truly love and accept herself. What happened in her past that hurt her or made her who she is now? So for Harper, you know, sometimes you'll hear this called a character's wound or their ghost. This is something that happened in their backstory that profoundly shaped who they are and what they believe about themselves. So this is usually some sort of really deep-seated event or fear, or, you know, just something that happened. And you don't have to explain this right away in the backstory, but it's just something good that you should know about your character, because it is going to shape who they are and what they believe about themselves. So for Harper, she was orphaned by her parents, so she's grown up in foster care, and there was a fire when she was 8 years old where her adoptive father died, and that fire was her fault. And so that night shaped her life forever, because she internalized the fact that it was her fault, that it was her strange abilities that caused this to happen. And so knowing that that wound that she carries with her, not only of being abandoned once by her parents, whoever they were, but also that, you know, once she finally found a family that was willing to adopt her, she was the catalyst behind one of those people dying and being abandoned again and then going into the foster system. So it's this feelings of abandonment in her past that has shaped who she is now, and obviously shaped her deepest desire and her deepest need. So then what does she now believe to be true about herself because of this past pain? So it's kind of like asking yourself, what did that thing that happened in my character's past how did that affect them, and how did that change who they are, and how does it change who they believe themselves to be? So for Harper, the fact that she finally got what she thought she wanted, which was a loving family that adopted her, and then she ruined it. She now believes that she is a broken person, that she is not worthy of love. She wants it desperately, but she feels like everybody who gets close to her is going to get hurt in some way, or that she's just going to continue to get abandoned. So she feels that she is unworthy of love. She truly believes that she is a damaged person. Sometimes you will hear this called the lie your character tells themselves, but it can also just be the belief that they have, and it is usually not true, but this is how they believe or see themselves. So for like Harper, she's broken, she's trouble, she's dangerous to be around, and she's unworthy of love. And that all stems from this fire where she accidentally killed someone she loved. What are they most afraid of due to that wound, and what are their worst fears? So usually their worst fears come out of whatever it is that happened in their backstory. Whatever that wound is, it affects their fears, because they're usually, your character is afraid of that same thing happening all over again. So for Harper, her worst fears is that she's going to lose control of her powers again and hurt someone else, which is going to leave her being alone and abandoned yet again. Those are her greatest fears. How do they portray themselves to others? What is their false self, or the armor they wear to protect themselves? So because Harper is afraid of being abandoned and afraid of hurting other people, she comes off really sarcastic and like she doesn't care. She comes off like she's a loner, like somebody who is perfectly fine on their own, thank you very much. That is kind of the armor she wears around herself, because she truly believes that if she allows anyone into her life, they're either going to get hurt or they're going to hurt her. And so that is in direct conflict with her deep desire to be loved. She pushes people away before they can push her away. What is their true self? Who are they deep down? Truthfully, Michael Haig, I think, calls this their essence. Deep down, truly, Harper is a deeply feeling person who, she has such a great capacity for love that she would be willing to give up everything and sacrifice everything for the people she loves. But she's never really been able to express that part of herself, because she's never let down these walls or truly believed she was worthy of love. But that's who she is deep down, is someone who is fiercely loyal and fiercely loving. So once I go through and I have all of those things figured out, I have a much better picture or clearer picture of who my character is in this moment. Now, I'll talk a little bit more at the end about how you deal with this when you're writing a series character that will be, featured throughout many books, because you don't want them to fix everything that's wrong with them and be perfectly happy forever after at the end of book one. So you have to kind of pace their character arc, but we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. So once I have this first part of the inner journey figured out, then I go and I fill out on page 2 the outer and inner goal, motivation, and conflict. Remember, I mentioned this book by Deborah Dixon. It's amazing, and I have pulled this table directly from her book. So please go and get that book if you want to really understand how to fill this out for yourself. But basically, all the work that we just did, figuring out your character's deepest fear, their wound, what they really want, but what they need, all of that is going to play into the inner goal, motivation, and conflict on this sheet. Let's go ahead and look at that. So I've got the outer goal, motivation, conflict in the first table there, the first column, and then the inner is in the second column. So let's go ahead and fill out the inner column here. Harper's goal, this is when we're talking about the inner conflict or inner goal, motivation, and conflict, we're often talking about what does she need, not what does she think she needs, but what her true inner goal or her inner need is to believe in herself and be accepted for who she is. Motivation is, why does she need that? Well, she needs it because she will never fit in and find her heart's desire of being loved if she's trying to be someone else and if she doesn't truly love herself. The conflict there is that she doubts herself. She gets in trouble when she tries to be truly herself, and she's afraid of being abandoned. And because of that fear, she doesn't allow herself to see who she truly is, or what, that she's truly worthy of love. So that helps it to easily fill out that inner goal, motivation, and conflict. Now, going over to the outer goal, motivation, and conflict, this is directly related to your plot. So this is more of the outer things that she needs. So her outer goal when she starts this story is to fit in at Peachville High School and be on her best behavior. The motivation or her why behind that is to avoid the juvenile detention center. At the very beginning of the story, her social worker has told her that since she's been kicked out of yet another foster home for messing ups, her powers actually are what are getting her in trouble. When she gets angry, things fly around the room and she gets in trouble for like attacking people, even though it wasn't something she did on purpose. But her social worker has told her that this Shadowford home for troubled girls in Peachville is her last chance, absolutely her last chance. And if she messes things up here, she's going into juvenile detention center until she graduates. So if she truly wants to fit in and find, a place where she can be accepted, this is pretty dire circumstances here. She has to be on her best behavior and not get into any trouble. So the motivation there is to avoid juvenile detention center because this is her last chance. And the conflict often will be multiple tiers of conflict. So the first conflict for her is that she can't control her powers or her abilities. She doesn't have the skills or the tools to control them. And in order to be on her best behavior, she needs to learn to control them. So those are at conflict with each other. And then the biggest conflict of the story is that a cheerleader at this high school is murdered, and there's evidence that points to Harper being the murderer. So there goes her best behavior, because now people believe that she has actually killed someone, which is pretty much the worst thing she could have possibly done, and of course plays again on her greatest fears after what happened to her adoptive father. Basically, all you need to do is figure out what is your character's goal, why do they want that goal, and what is keeping them from achieving it on both a plot standpoint and an inner standpoint. If you've filled out the character's inner journey at the beginning, then filling out the inner goal, motivation, and conflict is going to be super easy. The outer goal, motivation, and conflict, you may not 100% know all of that right away, but you might work through a little bit more of that as we get into the plotting. But if you can just sketch out a basic, what does your character want to achieve? Like, what is their goal or their quest, and why do they want it, and what's keeping them from it, you'll be so much better off when we go to start plotting the story. Then, just as a final character arc section here, I like to always mark where my character is at the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. This is, not really doing something so different from what I've done, but it's just sort of clarifying it so that I know and can very easily see where my character is going from the beginning to the end. Sometimes I will also fill this out as a triangle with the middle at the top. So I've got the beginning, the middle, and the end over here. So at the beginning of my story, Harper is scared of being abandoned. So this is like all of this, her longing, her need, all of that plays into this. What her fears are. She's scared of being abandoned or being sent to juvenile detention. She's trying to hide who she really is, and she doesn't truly love and accept herself. By the middle of the story, or the mirror moment, if you really want a good explanation of the mirror moment, you can pick up James Scott Bell's Superstructure, but he also wrote a book called, I believe it's called Write Your Story from the Middle, and it is all about the midpoint or the mirror moment. So I will link that down below as well. He covers some of what he says in that book in Superstructure, but he just goes a little bit deeper into it in this other book. But for Harper, it's this moment of who am I really? Like realizing for the first time that there are others who have powers like her, and understanding that there's more to the story, more to her own story than she believed. So it's the first time that she's starting to really see that there is more to her story than she ever knew before, which is kind of one of the first steps into her accepting herself for who she is, because she never really understood who she was in the first place. Then the end of the story, she has finally found someone else to accept her for who she is, and she finally feels that she is starting to fit in somewhere. So one thing that you will see about this particular thing, this is where I'm going to get into a little bit about your character's arc when you're writing a series. So my character of Harper started out when she was 15. She's now 20 years old when I'm writing the books now. So we've been through years of her life with her. She's grown up throughout the story. So she's very different now that I'm working on book 10 than she was all the way back in book 1. 1. And I did not want her to be a static character. Now, sometimes in episodic, like mysteries where you have a detective or the same character that recurs, it's really so plot driven that you're not seeing a lot of changes in that character as it goes. But with my type of story and with a lot of stories, you're going to have substantial character growth. And one of the things that readers don't want to see is a character growing to a certain point, and then when you get to the next book, they're right back to being the same person they were before. So for that reason, you need to make sure that you're, taking that character down specific steps along their journey to who they will someday become. So for example, with Harper, she doesn't really get to a point where she fully loves and accepts herself at the end of book 1. She makes a tiny step on that journey because she begins to understand a little bit more of her own backstory and her own past. And she's finally been accepted by another group. But you start to see in book 2 how she really still isn't being true to herself and is still trying to pretend to be someone else or something that she's not. So she hasn't fully evolved yet, but she's made a small step into who she will eventually become. So when you're writing those characters in a long series, you need to think about how many books you're going to be writing and where you want the character to end up at the end of this epic saga, or if it's just 3 books or 2 books, how long does your character have to make that true character arc, and how can you allow them to grow a little bit in each story so that they're slowly getting to be who they are. Now, she may reach a point where she truly believes and accepts herself, by book 5 or 6, but then she's got new inner journey that she begins in book 7, and that is in fact what happens with Harper. But characters wouldn't want to see her coming against this wound of feeling that she can't control her powers and that she's a broken person. And then she evolves past it and she's feeling like she believes in herself. And then in the next book, she's suddenly a broken person who doesn't believe in herself anymore. That would just be really difficult to read as a reader. You want to see this character evolve and then grow and grow and grow. And they're always going to have things that they have that are challenges to them. But it's just important to make sure that when you're writing a series that you do allow the character to grow and then stay in that state of growth as they're facing yet another challenge. Okay, I think that is enough about character arc. Be sure to check out the resources that I mentioned down below. Also, be sure to come back for the next video in this series, which is starting with elements of Act 1. All right, I will see you guys in my next video. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified the second a new video goes up from me. I do try to post every Thursday and Sunday these days, but since writing is my main gig, sometimes I'm a little bit behind. So definitely hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified when it goes up. I would also love to have you join my newsletter over at heartbreathings.com. If you go to heartbreathings.com/plotyournovel, you can download a free guide on all of these things that we're talking about. All these character sheets and everything else that we're going to fill out through this plot series will be there for you to download. All you have to do is join my newsletter list, and I would love to see you guys there. All right, that is it for this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.